What happens when community meets conversation? You get real stories, honest dialogue, and hear voices from your neighborhood. This is CANdid Conversations, where change begins with listening.
Welcome everyone to CANdid Conversations. I'm your host, Merrick Korah. Today we're joined by Maxheimer from Community One, Jasmine Roxanne Calhoun from Wheel Ministries, Kim Armstrong from Echo Housing and Community Development. Today we'll be exploring how residents move from being consulted to being decision makers and movers and shaping the neighborhoods that we live in. And so with that being said, Kim, can you take it away with neighborhood power and what we've heard from residents?
Yeah, okay. So this is our resident report for the neighborhood power residents as planners and partners. So what we heard was clear. Too often, people get invited to meetings only after decisions are already made. Folks told us that real power looks different. It means being at the table from the start with the ability to say yes, no, or even change direction. It means community budgets that residents control, not just advisory roles. We also asked what success in revitalization really looks like, and the answers weren't about higher property values or new businesses moving in. Success, they said, is when families get to stay, when kids have safe parks, when culture and history are preserved, and when projects like community gardens, youth centers, or affordable housing actually serve the people who live here. Of course, there are barriers like zoning laws nobody can understand, funding that skips over grassroots groups, and a mindset that residents can't lead. But people are pushing back. They're organizing, they're claiming resources, and they're proving that neighborhoods are strongest when the people who live there are the ones shaping them. So because at the end of the day, when residents lead, everyone benefits. That's what we heard from our folks out there, man.
Pretty good.
That is so true. Again, we have these opportunities each time that we have this show to reach out to residents and have them share their lived experience. Like, not only do we have folks on here talking about it in depth, but we hear from the people that are most affected by the things that are taking place right here in our city. And so each time you can catch residents sharing their voice right here on CANdid Conversations. And like always, I think we're going to take some of that we've heard today and kind of expand on that with the folks that we have here today. They have a lot of experience with locking arms with residents, being residents themselves, and showing what that power looks like whenever we can come together in that way.
And kudos to you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. With that being said, I just want to start off with maybe a simple question. And that question is, when you hear the phrase neighborhood power, what comes to mind for you personally?
Jasmine said I have to go first. Okay, so I think about it on two levels. One is exactly what you heard there from the residents already, from the feedback that's given, of the actual process of being able to make decisions and the cultural systems and societies that we've uplifted or uphold that are current right now, they don't usually support that. Even organizations that mean to do well in neighborhoods, oftentimes they're designing what the change process is going to be outside, and then inviting neighbors into it to be representative, and that representation is different than power. Representation is a good step for our society, especially for neighbors that have been excluded, demographics that have been excluded from representation. I want to say thank you to the organizations that are doing that hard thing to show representation, but it's only a step towards something. Representation is not decision making. So keep taking those important steps, first of all. But then the power that I think of is the power that already is represented, and that's been my own journey of trying to move beyond just allowing neighbors to actually to design and make decisions for themselves, but to recognize they already are doing that. Like agency is not something I give to someone, it's something they already have. And so as we talk about neighborhood power, the power is it's already there. That's why we take an assets-based community development approach. That's why we meet amazing neighbors like Roxanne. It's not so that we can give her agency or power. It's just simply to recognize what's already present and the power that's latent in these communities that we're ready to unleash.
Absolutely.
Lifting up voices.
Yeah, even more than that. Like that voice is there.
Yeah.
It's already speaking. It's been speaking. Yeah. It's just like, how can we get out of the way almost of what's already there?
Yeah, or just help amplify or advocate for what is being said. You've said a couple things that I want to touch on. Can you explain what asset-based community development is?
Yeah, to be as concise as possible. A lot of the times we'll uplift needs, and I understand why our impulse is to do that is because we want to help. So when we see people or populations in need, we draw that out so then we can advocate or show the case for why we need an intervention or why we need financial resourcing or whatever. But what happens is the narrative that we tell oftentimes when we draw out needs or the deficits in communities, it destroys them either like explicitly or just undermining slowly over time when this community needs this, it needs that, it needs this. And so an assets-based community development approach recognizes the assets that are already latent in the community. And that can be programs, that can be organizations, but we all know most importantly, it's the neighbors themselves. So every neighbor, I believe, and we believe, is created in the image of God. And so they're image bearers of literally the prime reality of all existence.
That's it. Right.
And so we need to build relationships with those neighbors and then just simply through listening, uncover what's there and then do everything in our power to remove barriers to whatever that is, whether it's internal to a neighbor or as a society, to remove those barriers so that they can be that the asset that is the most powerful can be unleashed in the world because our world needs it and our neighborhoods need it.
Yeah, you're not lying. And you went ahead and answered the second question that I was going to ask you, which was in line with that innate ability, innate worth that we find in one another. We have to be able to see that when we step into these places. If not, we will go to the deficit mind or that we're just focusing on needs rather than gifts, talents, and assets that we see right in front of us.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing, and then I want to hear from Roxanne, and I'll quit talking. But I'll say it's just a heck of a lot more fun, too. I always appreciate the analogy or illustration of water the green spots. So if you think about a desert, you know, if you just pour water in a desert, you just feels like you're wasting that resource. But if you pour it on the green spot, it can grow and spread from there. And I love that. It's beautiful. It's like, and it's so much more fun to watch living things continue to grow instead of just continue to waste such a valuable resource into the arid ground. And so we want to build on assets because it's a heck of a lot more fun than just continuing to dump things into a bucket of need, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Jasmine, when you hear the phrase neighborhood power, what comes to mind for you personally?
Personally, when I hear neighborhood power, it makes me think, do we have it? Like, in regards to, like, when I first moved to the South Side, it was unbelievable to see, like, the lack of, like, hope and everything. And so when I first started getting into the community, you know what, if anything, it's kind of more of the feeling of that we're powerless. But in actually, like, in putting it in perspective, how Austin puts it, like, that is amazing that what the assets that the neighbors actually have. But then even one of my first conversations with Jonathan Bashir was, do I belong at the table? Like, you know, he made me feel welcomed, and organizations like Leadership Everyone and everything through you, Austin, and stuff. But it just ultimately is like, where does someone belong? Like, do we inside of us do we feel like that we're adequate enough to be at the table. So first it's like igniting the power within ourselves that does truly have to sometimes come from an outside source of people, like y'all, like Community One and Echo, and people who are doing the work for Evansville and stuff, leadership, everyone, to kind of empower us and say, no, we do want to hear your voice. But also on the level, like with TP Park Neighborhood Association, giving us the resources to do what we have inside of ourselves to do.
Yeah.
Where have you seen, and we may be getting into this a little bit more later, where have you seen the difference between, I guess, outside organizations saying that they want to give power, and then you actually seeing power being given to you? And given is a really bad word. It shouldn't be given. But where have you felt as if you've been allowed that opportunity to step into power?
Directly, once again, coming from Leadership Everyone and having that conversation with Maria about the Nourish program and like what's up? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just we because us being in the same room for that time of the retreat, we got closer, we got to talk and everything else like that. And then obviously bringing that back to Community One, bringing it back to TP, that's whenever y'all were like, okay, we can make this a reality type thing. So that was when it kind of felt like, okay, like, you know what I mean?
So would you say, is it fair to summarize that as say like, you were listened to, but your input then was acted on, and then resourced.
Definitely, because I and I'm not trying to downplay or what I'm saying, anybody else's organization, but with me being in the community for like 3-some years on this position where I technically don't have a title other than I can say TP. Now I can say more things, but you know what I mean? But not really even a title, just associated with great people type thing that's, I believe, more is doing the work independently and then can get resourced by organizations. But, sometimes it is a whole lot of talking. It's a whole lot of talking and, it'll be the same issues over and over and over again. And then it'll even be said, well, we need to form this in order to stop it. And then I'm like, I'm waiting on that email. Or I'm waiting, on different things. Meet us here type thing for the next event. But then nothing comes from it. And so I'm like, okay. And then that's when, the flame doesn't dwindle, but then sometimes it shifts to where it's like, y'all don't want to fix this. You know what I mean? And then that's when it kind of turns into a different type of energy where it's like, somebody has to do it.
That's a good point. And we're going to touch on that a lot deeper whenever we come back. So you guys stick with me. We'll be back in just a second. All right, welcome back, everyone. And with that perfect segue that Jasmine was just mentioning, I would like to dive into the question of how do we move from a token resident, a resident that's only being called upon whenever it's convenient, maybe from outside organizations or government, to a true resident decision-making power that is actually shaping the neighborhood and being listened to and supported. So where have you seen, maybe both and, where have you seen both the token resident and where have you seen it start to shift, at least here locally in Evansville?
I can start us off with an example from our work in TP Park, which Merrick, we've talked about it many times. But one of our early residents who just went all in she just came alive when her agency was recognized, right? Like her power was resourced and flamed, and barriers were removed. Her name was Lisa, and because she's amazing, like Roxanne, like all of our TP Park leaders, she was immediately then networked into larger conversations, and she was asked to participate on a board of a local organization here, and she excitedly stepped into that role because she was hoping to influence larger conversations than just the neighborhood. Well, after about a year, about 18 months of that experience, she pulled me aside and was like, I'm going to step off this board. And I was like, why, Lisa? And she said, well, I know they mean well, but I just feel like I'm the token resident. Like the way she phrased it, it was, I just feel like I'm a box that was checked.
Yeah.
And I know most of the people that were leading that, and I know that was not their heart, you know. But just because you have a heart for something doesn't mean that the residents that are stepping into those spaces feel valued.
Yeah.
And so
Different
she
thing.
actually made the decision to go back and reinvest her energy into the neighborhood association initiative, because we had built that table for residents. When we invited stakeholders to that table, it was only to invest in the residents' vision for change. And so in my mind, that's the difference, is the design of the decision-making table genuinely for residents and neighbors to make actual decisions. And I would say that a lot of organizations aren't there yet, and that's okay. And that's why I said representation is an important first step.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, we need to continue to make sure we have representation on boards, but how can we allow those representative voices to actually disrupt the systems that we're doing genuinely and not as a box that we're checking? And I'll say that I even had that experience myself. So even though I, am of a majority population, white male, highly educated, all these things, just we made family decisions to have a limited income because my wife wanted to be a homemaker, and I worked for a nonprofit. And so I actually got asked to participate on a board once, not because of who I am or what I had to offer, but because I checked a box for an income bracket, and they needed that. So I had the feeling of that myself, even though, I didn't grow up with a lot of high marginalization experience in my life. Right. If anything, I was the opposite. But I was so glad that I had that experience, though, because I was like, now I can truly feel what Lisa felt, and I can feel like, oh man, this is what it means to feel like I'm just checking a box. And so I can lead with empathy different, and I can reimagine our work differently because I had that experience.
It's very powerful. Shout out to Lisa. We miss you. You're awesome. You're an all-star.
Yeah, if you're getting this in Kentucky.
But that's so true. And I would say that I was in similar spaces alongside Lisa, experiencing that same thing. I will say that luckily years later, that same space has transformed into a better, more healthier space for residents to be heard.
Yeah, and kudos to organizations for learning.
Yeah.
Learning from those experiences.
Yeah.
We're all there's exceptions, but we're all doing our best.
Yeah.
The point is, when we fail, to recognize it, to hear that truth, and then to learn and grow from it.
And I hope that for those of you listening can maybe take just that, if anything, away from this, is that we should be in a process of continuous growth if we allow ourselves to be in that posture. And it is okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to then own those same mistakes and be better moving forward. I think the more that we do that, the more that people see the authenticity, the realness from people, and can lean into those places to build trust. But if we're out here not owning what is ours to be owned, and we're not creating spaces where people can feel safe enough to open up their hearts and minds and to lock arms with one another, then we're just going to see the same mess over and over again. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to learn. It's okay to then take that step forward and be better because of those things. Jasmine, same question. How do we move from token resident to a true resident decision-making power? If you have been in spaces where you have felt that you're only being listened to or a box being checked, and you could speak into those places, what would you say to them?
So
let it loose.
y'all know me with the food insecurities. So when those people came and they was like, this is exactly what y'all should do and blah blah blah, and had everything that it would take, I guess you could say, like on paper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, I'm not going to even necessarily say people like me, because it sounds like I'm demeaning myself, and I know that I'm intelligent, especially when it comes to looking stuff up. Austin, you know how I am. So when it comes to, okay, you got the people that fit the blueprint, I guess you can say, that is still telling you the same thing, but then you've also had data that shows, for example, us being 35% unhappy with our access to food to jumping up to 57% unhappy with our access to food. And that was in like 2022.
Yeah.
So it's like, when does it matter what the people are saying? And then the excuse comes, well, that's not priority. So it's like, what's the point in us talking?
Yeah.
Like, you know, what's the point in us bringing this to the table? Why are y'all doing surveys? Why are we having voice sessions? Why are we doing this if the token is telling you, like, hey, this is a priority to me? And then how do we become, like, how do we feel like that we have a chance to change anything?
Yeah, if you were to speak into those spaces and they're listening, what would you tell them? How they could, in a very simple way, maybe it's just a small change that leads to bigger changes, but is there something fairly simple that can be implemented or acted upon?
Bring the neighbors to the table when it comes to the action steps next.
Okay.
So we could be accountable as well for what does it take, you know, do you need the people like boots on the ground to go do certain stuff type thing? But I feel like the more, like you said, you empower us, you'll get to see our different talents anyways and different gifts that we haven't had a chance to show, type things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, from the listening to then decision making to then actually doing the work, every step along the way. Austin, as far as like from a community perspective, what are some strategies that you've seen work in making that happen for residents?
It's hard not to talk about Love Your Neighborhood as that, which is weird because we built that.
Yeah, talk about it, because I'm sure somebody out here don't even know about it, and they should.
Yeah, so Love Your Neighborhood is Community One's approach to assets-based community development. So we say that we used kind of that approach as our foundation, but then we kind of made some adjustments with what we would call Jesus's ministry to marginalized neighbors that we see in the Gospels and all that. So we kind of wedded these two things together. And we just call it Love Your Neighborhood because neighborhoods are full of neighbors, and the greatest commandment is to love God and then love your neighbors as yourself. So if we're going to truly love neighbors, especially neighbors that have faced marginalization, in America, neighborhoods are the number one place where you can find a collection of high percentages of our neighbors who have been marginalized, whether that's through racial injustice, poor decision making in life as individuals. You know, we got to just recognize that happens too. Systemic injustices, just all the things, because the way we like to say most simply is that neighbors that have experienced marginalization, whether fixed income, any of those things, they're usually concentrated in neighborhoods because they can afford to live there. That's the simplest explanation of a very complex issue.
For sure.
But the housing stock, for example, in TP Park is significantly lower than the McCutcheonville neighborhood. And so neighbors that are experiencing poverty, marginalization of all sorts, they are concentrated in neighborhoods like TP Park for the most part. Now, I want to say for the record, not every neighbor that lives in TP Park is marginalized, and not every marginalized neighbor lives in TP Park, right? So, correct. So when we love our neighborhoods, we are then loving our neighbors, and so that's what we do. And so everything around a Love Your Neighborhood initiative is designed to be for and by neighbors, not as a token, not as representation, but that table that Lisa sat at, that Roxanne sits at, that you and I sit at, Merrick, around TP Park, that is not Echo or Community One or anyone else building a table and then inviting people to it. It is the neighbor's table, and they're making every decision around that table, period. And so I'd say that that's the difference, is how do we design tables and then actually recognize that they're the ones that not only make the decisions, but they can take the action. So that's the difference between like a system that we're inviting people into and creating a different system that's outside of it, that's free from all these constraints.
For sure.
Yeah.
I wish we had more time before this break, because I would love to open that up a little bit more, but you guys stick with us and we'll be back with more conversations. All right, welcome back, everybody. Now that we're back, I would like to just pick up where we left off. We were talking about decision-making tables, and instead of finding ourselves at tables that are already built and invited to, we have tables that are built and made for us, where our voices are guaranteed to be heard, and that we know that we are accountable for then what takes place after decisions are made at that table. And that is the action that Jasmine has talked about before. But Austin, can you expand a little bit more on what does that look like at those decision-making tables and the work that comes out of that in regards to defining success?
Yeah, so I want to answer this on two levels. I'll try to be concise again. But in a Love Your Neighborhood initiative, we define our ultimate success by how many neighbors we've met and how many are engaging in the change process. And we had to create that definition of success because no one else was tracking success that way. So for us, it doesn't matter if we do a house in the neighborhood, right? Like if a resident is engaged in the change process of building her own house, like Bree was, that is a different level of success, right? And so we track that over time in that way. And so any organization can pick that up in any context. I mean, you'd have to adjust it and apply it, but you have to. We've defined success as a society for like numbers and food lines, for example. Yeah. What if we reimagined what success looks like is not how many neighbors we fed, but how many neighbors fed themselves? And so there's small tweaks like that take courage for organizations, because every grant process, everything is set up to sustain what is currently existing as a society. And so to create new definitions of success is a challenge, and it's hard work, and you have to do a lot of sense making and framing and re-educating people, but it's worth it.
It is.
Okay, so then the second thing I'd say is that in every Love Your Neighborhood initiative, all 5 neighborhoods of local initiatives have a plan for change that's completely populated by resident voice. And so instead of making decisions at a Tuesday afternoon at 3:00 genuinely at the Civic Center, maybe just adopt these resident voice plans and define success by if we've made movement in these areas. For example, the one that we've been I'm looking at Jasmine Roxanne's hat right now, mentoring. We've said as a neighborhood that we want to find a mentor for every kid in the neighborhood that wants one, right? Recognizing that maybe not every kid wants a neighbor, and that's okay. Well, we have all these organizations that are providing mentoring programmatic responses, which is good. We need those. But what if they define success by the way that TP Park neighbors define success? What if every neighboring or mentoring organization in our city defined their success by what residents in TP Park have already said? Like, wow, now we have alignment. We have resident voice being fulfilled. We have a definition of success as a society that's beyond our own organization or program, and we really start to have like movement that I believe that things could actually change. And that's just one example, right? So open up those quality of life plans, look in there, and like, what if we define success by what residents have already voiced? Like, those are two just kind of thoughts to think about that I think would be way transformative for our community.
Very powerful. I think, I've heard from organizations before saying, hey, we went out, we surveyed, we heard from residents, they said they wanted this, let's just say financial literacy classes, for example. And so we created that and we brought it to them, and then nobody showed up. And they're asking, and why?
You created it and you brought it to them.
Exactly.
You answered it in your own statement.
Exactly. And so, like, what, to your point, what would it look like then? Very simply, if we were to adopt this, one, I feel like an overall city plan would be more complete by adopting these. But then also, because the residents have voiced it and they're leading it and they're participating in it, I think the piece that is missing for a lot of folks is the buy-in. And that is that it's not just buy-in because they feel like they need the programming or the assistance. It's the buy-in that, hey, you've shown up for us and we trust you, and what you are doing alongside of us has us ready to be accountable for the success of this program or this initiative or this help. And I guarantee it, if that's the posture that we show up with, that we don't have to worry about marketing our programs. We don't have to worry about advocating for ourselves or why we need to be funded for something, because we'll see that tangible impact in the lives of neighbors, and they will do the marketing for us or for each other, in that, hey, you really got to get plugged with this program or organization. This is how they treated me. This is maybe even a friend of mine now, and this is where my life is now because of what they've done.
Building trust.
Building trust. Building trust.
I think that trust word is the biggest thing right there.
It really is.
Talking about.
It really is. Because, yeah, you can bring anything in. If there's no trust there, good luck.
And that's why they're not going to bang down your door just because you put a flyer up or a banner up and say, this is what we're doing. Nobody's going to knock down your door, come into it unless they trust you.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so with that segue, Jasmine, you mentioned Leadership Everyone. You mentioned Maria. Maria is a young lady from Urban Seeds, another local not-for-profit organization who's doing great work in the food space. And so it sounded like you guys were at a retreat together, and then based off of that, something had then taken place afterwards. Can you talk about that and talk about how that has, again, not only empowered or you have a say, but then how does that redefine success, specifically in that food space?
So because of Austin, I don't even remember where I was, like some type of like conference or something, and then before you know it, I got the text message about, do you want to go to this Leadership Everyone retreat, and that Lynn Miller Pease will be giving me a call. So even just I have to kind of talk about her first just briefly, because she's just amazing and funny. Because she was just like, I'm talking to her and I'm thinking like, have I met you before or something? And she's like, no. And I was like, oh, she says, but you can Google me. And I just remember thinking, okay.
That sounds like Lynn.
Yeah, I was like, that is, like, to me, I'm thinking, that's what's up. Like, that's so cool that I can Google you. And so, I mean, I guess you could Google me too, but it would just be like sports, high school stuff. And so when she said that, I was like, period. And so
I'm
then,
gonna Google you now, though. So
okay.
Look
Okay.
out.
And so, but yeah, and so with that, it was, that built a cool relationship with me and her anyways. So then before you know it, going to the retreat, didn't know what to expect. And the way that they set it up is so like personal and things like that, so you really just kind of instantly become friends if you're open to receive that. Jelena Masco, Vakun, a lot of different people like that was in my class too that same year. So with Maria and us being bunkmates and me learning her position and stuff at Urban Seeds, because I honestly didn't even know what Urban Seeds was, like how increase that awareness, bringing in like that trust, like, oh, you guys exist, like and then what do you do? And then when I found out, it was like, oh, type thing like that. And so we literally were just like up at night, just over here, like she was looking up the Dollar General market and different things based just all off of our conversation. And now where would that lead to? I didn't know yet at that time, but I know we were both fully engaged in the conversation. So when she brought up the Nourish program, And when my main thing was when I heard that they accepted EBT food stamps,
Big deal.
I was like, why would you not be in the area that has that the most people use the food stamps at? You know, and so before you know it, that's whenever it led to the TB Park Distribution Center for that.
Can you share a little bit about what Nourish is, as much as you know, and then what does that distribution look like? After you made that comment of why wouldn't you be in a space that has the highest majority, what does that look like nowadays?
So my understanding of Nourish is it's basically an online grocery store that it's really good when it comes to the price, and it's not like a Simpsons, it's more like a Walmart, but the quality is better. It give or take. She tries to do everything local picks on produce. She has bundle bags for up to $10, but they don't just provide produce, they provide cheeses, meats. I think they even have like a taco like fiesta pack and things. But they do accept EBT to where you can call, and I think you have to give them a code or something like that, and then it'll be paid for. Then you pick it up at a TP Park, or I believe it's at Trinity Methodist downtown.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is for anybody who's listening. If you wanted great produce at a very reasonable price, all you have to do is go online to Urban Seeds, and through that process, you can pick up your bundle. Is it every other week for the most part, or?
For the most part, and then once again emphasizing that it's not just produce. It is meat, cheeses, all that good stuff.
So you guys can go online and get your bags from Urban Seeds, anything and everything that you need at a really good price, really good product that they offer.
And I just continue to toot their horn. You talk about making decisions in light of residents, not just their voice, but like they've tapped into Jasmine as a local expert. They've done their pickup in TP Park, added a second location because that's what residents have said, and they've committed to a full year of learning and trying, because a lot of times it just takes time for neighbors to develop trust, to show up, to learn how to do an online store. Like, these are new skills that a community has to develop, communication channels, everything. And so sometimes it takes a while, and if you just flare up and then go away 3 months later or 6 months later or 7 months later, neighbors might just now be ready to take ownership of that thing, and you're gone.
Absolutely.
So kudos again to Urban Seeds for being in it and being willing to allow residents to shape what they do.
Absolutely. All right, guys, with that, we're going to take one last break, but when we come back, we're going to finish this thing out. All right, guys, welcome back. Thank you for spending this time with us. What we're going to end on is talking about not only barriers, but even like a closing remark of a call to action, if you will, or maybe some nuggets of wisdom from the time that we've spent in this space and the things that we've seen that really just deflate the energy and morale of folks that we've done life with. And so with that being said, Roxanne, if you don't mind talking to us about what are some barriers as a resident that you have experienced in regards to knowing what you have to offer, showing up in these places because you have that to offer, but not being received? What are those barriers that you've had to interact with?
Really, it's people can look at you and hear what you're saying, and other people, which may not be a part of even the change, are more receptive than the person you're even talking to. Like, they'll kind of just look at you like, oh, okay. They're, like you said before, kind of listen just to listen. But then also what I've kind of been facing here lately is that it can be like a good plan and you feel like you got your I's dotted and your T's crossed, but you'll get those few people that, let's say, already have the influence or already have the, say they've done something similar or whatever, and it'll be almost like the pushback of, no, that's not going to work. And then if you get that from a powerful enough person, that will attach to everybody else in the room, and it'll be like, oh, well, just forget it, because if we're talking about residents, what has a resident already done for their track record to show that what they're saying is even legit? Do they know what they're talking about? What is the proof? Like, type things like that. When in actuality, a lot of people start off as residents or surely college grads themselves that took that project, did it, and then it became successful.
And probably failed several times along the way.
Exactly.
Themselves.
For the neighbors, I don't know if this is the same as what you're asking me, but for the neighbors, I would say it took courage for me to start showing up. Show up. You know what I mean? Don't just keep talking, ourselves. Like, that's the accountability on us. Don't just keep talking, but then believe that you will talk to that right person. Jonathan, for me, was that right person. Like, even though necessarily they didn't directly do anything at that moment, his words did enough to say, we need more of people like you in this room, type things. It was that empowerment, that he gave me to kind of, just keep going,
Austin, do you have anything to add in regards to the resident perspective? If not, I was going to ask you to speak on this organizational side of thing.
Well, I always think about the narratives that we tell and place onto people. That would be like maybe the only thing I can add from a resident perspective is like having moved into the neighborhood in the south side from the west side 6 years ago, like the narratives that we tell as a community about the residents that live in these neighborhoods is unquestionably false. There's like extremes, of course, that live into these stereotypes, and so there might be like 3% of the population that lives into things that these negative stereotypes that we reproduce, but that's such an outlier. Most everyone and the communities themselves as residents, it's like, and so then we create these barriers for residents by the narratives that we place onto them, and that's maybe the only thing I could add.
Could I chime in real quick on right there? I can't help but the fact that you said that with the narrative thing, to also say in reality, look at the physical barriers that they place on the south side to why they're more prone to do some of those things. They're like, well, why? They're just out there bored, so they're just gonna, you're angry, you're hungry, it's hot, you're in poverty,
fun to do.
You're going through all these things. People say idle hands, like, it's the devil's work. So it's things like that, to where it's like they don't have anything to do, and that's just a small piece on why certain things flow the way that they flow.
Not to mention, even if you have things to do, I was doing some crazy stuff on the west side when I was 17 years old, and if I would have got popped, but guess what? There was no patrol over there, so there was no chance of getting caught.
Oh wow! Allegedly.
So we do have to take into consideration the systematics of what we're dealing with, right? Because it's not just this happens because of this reason. It's very much multifaceted and a spider web of
single narratives are not helpful.
Not helpful at all.
I think the history of the system that has happened there. I mean, let's not take out redlining and
oh, man.
The systemic things that have happened in our community that have isolated communities.
The built environment of the Lloyd and 41 in downtown that makes, you would never, I always say, if you're from Evansville and you're not on the south side, you would have no reason, and it's almost hard to get physically into the south side because of the built environment. And
that's why I didn't know what was happening. From living on the southeast side, that's why I didn't know what was even that reality was turned to be my reality for those years on the south side.
You will see the reality of that if you're just wanting to do an experiment, drive down into the south side of Evansville and then time yourself to get in and out of the south side of Evansville, because it takes a while. You're going through neighborhoods. You are boxed in by the major expressways, but if you won't have that same experience if you were to go out to the east, west, or north side. There are many ways, multiple ways to get to where you need to go, and really limited ways of just stepping into the south side. Austin, before we move on, I wanted to just say kudos to you for moving into the neighborhood. That's life-changing. I think not only for you, for your family. That's the type of action that then gets change to take place. we sometimes want to do things from afar. We want to drive in from the suburbs, do our good works, and then drive back home, right? Like, but there's so much more that you're missing if you're not putting 2 feet down in the places that you say that you want to serve and create a community around. So I just want to commend you for that.
Yeah.
And to think that you've been there for this long already is really cool.
Yeah, and I want to just, well, thank you. I'll receive that, first of all. But I do want to say that I just want to be clear, because sometimes we've gotten pushback about this, and it's funny, like, you can't win for losing, right? Like, I did not move into the neighborhood with a savior complex.
Yeah.
I promise you. I had been doing neighborhood work for like 8 years before I moved to the neighborhood, and I had already been completely transformed and understood that I wasn't there to save the neighborhood. I just wanted to hang out with my friends. I just wanted to be closer. I wanted to be able to sit on my porch, play the guitar, and watch old school Mr. God rest his soul, you know, R.I.P. Kent drive by on his bike and say, "Hey, what's up, buddy?" You know, that's what it was. I wanted to truly be a neighbor. And so I would say that if you please move into the neighborhoods just so you can be next to neighbors, but unless you think that you're moving in to save them.
Seriously, yeah, you can stay where you're at if that's the case.
Just wanted to say for the record, I do not think I'm there to save
for
anyone.
sure.
I just want to be a good neighbor. And
and that I think that goes for a lot of the work that we do. The posture in which we show up is like the difference maker, right? Like if we can show up with a little bit of humility, we might learn something. If we can show up and knowing that other people have the answers, we can lean into that and get a new perspective on what's taking place. And I think that even helps with the narrative that you're talking about, is because once you put 2 feet down in a place, you'll come to find out who the neighbors are and what they do, how special they are, and how cool, and maybe even how many things in commons you have rather than not. So before we end our time, if you can, very briefly, what are some organizational barriers that you've seen and experienced?
Oh, goodness. Well, that is, I'm going to have to say this. There's a quote that I'm going to butcher, but it's well known of that the systems that we created are perfectly designed to get the results or outcomes that they're producing. And so the organizational barriers is the organizations and institutions themselves. And I don't say that as a knock on the people that are in those organizations that are trying their best, but our city government, our built environment, how we develop cities and communities, how we operate churches, how we operate neighborhood associations, all these things, those systems and institutions are designed to get the outcomes they're getting. And so when we sustain them, we're just creating barriers. I always think about Charles, our friend Charles Sutton. When asked like why he homeschools his kids, he's like, why would I put Joshua into the pipeline to prison?
Wow.
Like that is a system that's created that is sending my kid down that way. I don't care if you're promising me anything. Talking about the potter's wheel, the promise is like, I'm not wrapping around care and putting my kid in a pipeline that into this school that even if they're trying their best, ultimately as a demographic, as a number in the system, he's going to end in jail. So I'm not putting him in that system. So that's just an example. And I'll go to, that's my call to action too, is create systems outside the systems. Keep trying to reform the systems. Like we need to do that hard work of reform, but that's hard.
It is.
And it's even well-intentioned things. Systems are stronger than leaders, and they're hard to change. School corporations, civic governments, like that's going to take a long time to change those. We need to keep doing that hard work to try to change them. So create systems outside the system, like Jesus did, by the way, with the 12. I just had to throw that in there. Like he went to the synagogue as was his custom, right? So he tried to bring the reform to the temple, to the synagogues, to the Jewish religious system. But in order to create revolution, he created the 12 outside of that system and traveled with them on mission. And that's what I would say is the call to action is keep doing reform of internal systems, but create systems outside that genuinely give agency or recognize agency and give empowerment and resourcing, financial capital to residents or to people outside the system.
Absolutely. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for joining us on Candid Conversations today. We are going to end on that note. Let's think about systems outside the systems that we're upholding. How can we do something different with the resources and the people that we've come to care about? Until next time, guys, take it easy.